Hello, guys. Well, America seems to be in some kind of unrest at the moment, following the assassination of legendary activist Charlie Kirk on the 10th of this month. What began with sympathizers singing his praises has also seen others, especially left-leaning folks, desecrating his name and gleefully celebrating his silence, which is the reason for today's topic. As you may know, many company workers in America have been laid off after posting disturbing videos celebrating Charlie Kirk's news. Someone asked an insightful question on Reddit to clear the situation, and the replies were stunning. This was the question: how do you feel about people losing their jobs because they posted anti-Kirk content? As astonishing as the replies were, they could give you a clue as to how the average American thinks of the situation. Our first commenter bitterly criticized the government over it, stating, "To begin with, I'll say the same thing as I said about the Gina Carano thing. If you are an average, everyday nobody, then you should not be fired for things said online. Other than the obvious hostile chaos, what you say or do outside of work should have nothing to do inside of work. Clearly, all your previous actions outside of work had no bearing on your performance inside of work, so why is some content posted online a problem all of a sudden? If you are your product, as in you use your face or voice as your brand, then it is fair that it's up to whoever hired you for a job to drop you. When you use your identity to sell products and make money, but then you decide to say something negative, you negatively affect those product sales as well. Why are people so ready to give companies powers that either only a government should have or shouldn't even have?" A good point he made there, but frankly speaking, that was too simplistic. Another guy replied him by stating that hiring and firing is purely all down to how comfortable the employer feels about his subordinate. Here's his point. "My friend, I'm not into politics, but if I was the boss of the average, everyday nobody and saw or heard them rejoice in the public yeet-off of a person, then I really don't think I want that person working for me anymore. I don't believe that people's lives outside of work should have nothing to do with inside of work. It's not always about performance. Sometimes it's just about wanting or not wanting certain character traits. If they're posting sports dislike or some other basic BS, then fine, I don't care. But there is a point where personal opinions can influence what kind of person I want on my payroll." Some other guy then added, "Whether I agree with it or not, you should always be careful what you post on social media. Companies have been keeping an eye on them for a long time and going through your socials for various reasons. This is not a new thing. As I like to joke, never post anything on social media that you wouldn't like to have read back to you during cross-examination in court." I'm going to broaden that to "or in HR, and then I'll weaken my stance because we shouldn't be faceless drones in life. But the basic message is true. Freedom of speech is not freedom from consequences. I'm not going to post about Charlie Kirk, although I'm shedding precisely 0 tears for him." Precisely 0 tears? That was bold. Another lady made it clear that the First Amendment also includes another clause that's not much talked about, stating, "A side effect of the First Amendment interpretation, freedom of speech is also freedom of association, and a company can decide not to associate with you anymore by firing you. Call it a PR move or whatever, but that's been going on for generations." I can confirm this. Even back in the MySpace days, I was working with a company and we were looking to hire a couple of people. We'd absolutely check their MySpace pages if they had one to see what their vibe was. When we run background checks, we get a social media report. More than one occasion, we rejected someone at last stage because of some old post that was unsavory. These are exec positions paying north of $300K before bonuses. The internet lives forever, that's all I can say. I have teens and hopefully they're phasing out of this, but it seems younger folks care more about their online image than real-life reputation. It's like they're living double lives. It's very exhausting. And to think they're doing this all as voluntary labor for multi-billion-dollar companies that profit off their free voluntary labor and attention, and even mental health. I can relate with this. In fact, it feels like they're living triple lives at times. I have a bunch of Gen Z kids working for me, and they were absolutely shocked to learn that I only have one Instagram profile, rather than a real one in what they call a spam one. This is where they post their hot takes and BS. I just let them know that my key to Instagram is that I just don't post.
It's not even just social media that your work knows about. It's social media in general. A few old coworkers of mine recently got into it with each other over a post, and one of them turned the other one into her job over her comments, and she didn't even say anything that I thought was that bad. She flat out said she doesn't agree with or condone hostile chaos at all, but that Charlie Kirk was a vile person and she's not going to mourn his passing. And said again that she doesn't think he should have been unalived and that it's not okay. And this other girl screenshotted it, contacted her job, posted screenshots on her own page of her turning the girl in, and it got all kinds of old coworkers jumping in talking shit about this girl. Responding to OP, another commenter revealed a letter her children's school sent to all the parents and claims she feels deeply saddened about how stuff like it could affect America's democracy. Here's what she said. "I feel mostly very sad. I have an acquaintance on Facebook who posted a picture of his kindergartner was sent home with from school. His caption was, "I knew I picked the right school for my son." The letter is below. Before I post the letter, I have to say that it makes me sad because we're not one country anymore. We're going to be two countries, intertwined communities of disliked rivals. You will be welcomed at a MAGA school if you're of that ideology, or shunned if you're not. Now a similar experience is occurring in workplaces. Of course, the companies can fire someone for any reason in many states, but we'll have more and more workplaces and schools and institutions that are strictly one political side or the other. And that sucks. It's not how it's supposed to be. The Sheety letter. Imagine being non-MAGA and receiving this. It's just like, sheet, I guess I can't really send my kid to this school anymore unless I want my kid to be taught the MAGA curriculum. Dear parents, families, and staff of American Leadership Academy, the tragic events of this week remind us of the true cost of liberty and call us to reflect on who we are as individuals, as a community, and as a nation. American Leadership Academy was founded on the principles of faith, family, and the enduring virtues upon which our great nation was built, following in the tradition of our founding fathers. At the heart of these virtues is freedom. This week, we mourn the loss of a great American, a man who embodied many of the same principles we hold dear. Charlie Kirk challenged us all to do more and to be more, to reject apathy and indifference, to stand boldly for what we believe, and to live with conviction. Many have asked, what can I do? We have chosen a simple yet meaningful gesture. We are offering Freedom shirts made in the USA, which are available for students and families to purchase online, along with a limited supply available for purchase on campus. These shirts are approved for students to wear on Fridays as a visible reminder of the values we cherish and our shared commitment to learn, lead, and change the world, just like Charlie did.
Well, honestly, that doesn't read like a bad letter to me, but maybe I feel differently. Charlie Kirk actually embodied every trait the school guys above to crate him with, regardless of if he was MAGA or not. Anyways, we move on to the next comment. This guy seems to think it's not wrong to get fired for what they post online. Let's hear him out. It's not really about Charlie Kirk at this point, it's about what somebody reveals about themselves by publicly posting a performance of delight and joy that somebody was silenced. In some of the videos, they've also advocated for further hostile chaos against the victim's remaining family or against other people with similar political leanings. If I was employing somebody and they posted public commentary cheering for the recent silencing of a public figure, even a person I found distasteful, I would recognize that employee was mentally unhealthy and potentially dangerous, and I'd fire them without delay. Do I care if people post anti-Kirk content? No, of course not. You can have whatever opinion you want. Do I care if people celebrate his passing? Again, no. Be happy about whatever you want. However, do I care if people are celebrating a sparking that happened on campus? Yes, I do. Anyone who supports sparkings in public need to be removed from any position of power or responsibility. I don't want to be a guest in any workplace where some employee there would support an active sniper. Now, despite all these guys saying it's not wrong to get fired for what you post online, some left-leaning diehards still wouldn't agree. This guy made it clear that government or private workers have every right to criticize anyone and shouldn't be prosecuted for it. Here's his point. People who work for the government are being put on leave or suspended for quoting him directly. Government employees have the right to criticize the actual government just like every other American, and this man wasn't even in the government. If my uncle blinked and I said, it kinda sucks but he was a massive prick, so I'm also not too upset, would I deserve to be fired from my job? But someone quickly replied that doing that was circumstantially different from the Kirk situation, stating, "Mister, the difference is a lot of the posts aren't saying it kinda sucks that he blinked. Most of the posts of the people that are fired are saying, good, I'm glad, he deserved it. There's a big difference there, especially if you were in a profession where your job is to save lives or to keep people safe. If somebody such as a surgeon had that mindset, then could you imagine if that surgeon was operating on somebody and they found out the patient was of the other political party? Would you let somebody operate on you if that were you, and you knew that the surgeon thought anyone with your same beliefs deserved to blink?
But how about when people make similar cringe comments offline or in private? Why is that different, and why do they deserve to be laid off when they post their minds online? That's a point to consider too, and our next commenter raised the point, have you heard some of the shit that doctors and nurses say behind closed doors? That doesn't make them liabilities, but just because someone overhears them, now we can't trust them? But when Trump says, it's just locker room talk, everything's fine, then we can pretend there's nothing to see here? That isn't the scenario I am referring to. The scenario is that you find out the surgeon resents and thinks anyone with a differing political opinion than their own deserves to blink. You happen to be someone that differs with their opinion. You could be the MAGA side or they could, it doesn't matter.
would you still be okay with them operating on you? My lack of surprise over this is simply unfathomable. That anyone would think the right wouldn't immediately resort to cancel culture after whining about it for years is the height of idiocy. They don't care about free speech. They don't care about cancel culture. They don't care about comedy. They just want to use the slurs they grew up with. They're fine with all the dislike speech just as long as it's directed away from them, not towards them. Publicly celebrating someone being silenced in an act of political hostile chaos is directly advocating for future hostile chaos. Companies have a right to distance themselves from that behavior. Kirk didn't advocate for hostilities. He openly disagreed with others' beliefs, then put a mic in the hands of people who disagreed and often resented him. It was a sad day seeing popular subreddits do victory laps before his body was cold. I agree. I believe this tactic of trying to flip cancel culture back on the right is a joke. Cancel culture was largely men being canceled over accusations, many of which took place before they were verified, proven, or the accused was charged with a crime. The people being fired are being fired for something they undeniably did. And if we want to play the what about game, pretend it's 2021, but replace Charlie Kirk with George Floyd. Well, what I can say is, while it may feel unfair, it is the price to pay for freedom of speech. The constitutional protection of the First Amendment is protection from the government, not the public. Freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequences. Can you remember when Democrats fired people for refusing to take experimental drugs? What are you even saying? This is different from what was going on for 10 years on the left. The left was digging up old tweets from 10 to 15 years ago when the person was a teenager and using that tweet to get them fired from their current job.
This is not that. First, the consequences are immediate. Second, they are celebrating the silencing of someone they disagree with. You do not want that type of person working with you. You could align with them on 99% of issues, but as soon as you step one toe out of line, they will want you ghosted. Who wants to work with someone like that? People have always been able to get themselves in trouble for saying distasteful things. Employers have an entirely reasonable motivation to remove people who make public statements that might not represent the values of the institution they work for. The government pressuring these employers to go after employees over what they say is pretty alarming and authoritarian. If it's just them posting about disagreeing with his views, nobody should be losing their jobs, and that would be everything Kirk would be against. However, with some of the god-awful things that have been posted celebrating his takedown, the sickening graphic memes, and about his family, I can fully understand why a company would want to be rid of that person. There really are some disturbing people out there that have come to light after Kirk's silencing, and these companies obviously don't want them there or around their other workers. Well, guys, all these POVs indicate one clear, undeniable fact. Freedom of speech does not just end with itself. There's also freedom of association, which can be used by companies to, as one commenter said, choose not to associate with an employee anymore. But some people still can't see it that way. This lady called America fascist and warned everyone to leave. Hear her. Welcome to fascist America, where being woke is bad and censorship, but getting people fired because they don't treat a man wanting to implement passing sentences to homosexuals like a saint. This country is cooked. To smart people in the US, flee while you can. What's too funny is that Kirk got sheet on constantly by the right for normalizing gay people because so many people in his company are gay. He never wanted to implement passing sentences for gays. In a debate, a left-leaning person quoted, "Love your neighbor as yourself," and Kirk responded with something along the lines of, "2 paragraphs earlier in the Bible it says we should stone gays. Do you also believe I should do that?" It's unwise and hypocritical, but it's not advocating for implementing the capital punishment for gays. It shows you, once again, how batshit crazy Republicans are and how they cannot hear the voice of reason. The gaslighting they create is usually them trying to pull attention from something else. It is also genius how they exploit their followers. I mean, it sucks, but it's also like what the leftists say about rightists when it suits them. Businesses can choose how they employ. Even government jobs, honestly. I'm a soldier. I do my best to not post anything politics related on my socials because we aren't supposed to publicly.
Now, when it's the government getting private citizens fired, that's when it gets suspicious. To me, it's about the arbiters of judgment. I'm all here for the public backlash of my right-wing Facebook friends unfollowing me or arguing with me. When a company is taking away your livelihood, it feels icky. I try to remind myself that I have never found an issue with people being fired on the opposite end when they post ignorance. But that's pretty rare for people to be fired over, with the exception of hate speech. So far so good, guys. Which side of the argument are you on at this point? Please leave your opinions in the comments. Now, let's move to the next reply guy. She feels it's hypocritical for rightists to support the upper class against American workers. Here's her claim. It feels even ickier that the Republican voters of the same class as me are working with the upper class to hurt someone of their own station, when I feel we need to be uniting to take down the bourgeoisie and put power back in the people's hands. It's just not fun that the people doing the firing are the top 1%. It makes the systemic oppression feel that much more dismal when it's lower class teaming up with the rich to hurt other poor people. I understand it sucks, but it's like leftists say about rightists when it suits them. Businesses can choose how they employ. Now, when it's the government getting private citizens fired, that's when it gets unethical. Someone pointed out the real hypocrisy on the part of left-leaning folks, stating, "Liberals, Kirk deserved to go for his beliefs and words that we don't like. Also liberals, it's not right to get fired for your beliefs or words. What about the First Amendment? So being unalived in front of your children is fine, but losing your job for speech is wrong? Who are the fascists?"
Well, I'd say it depends on the situation. A person got fired for comments made to close friends only content, clearly not intended for public view. I feel that is crossing the line into free speech, but a company can choose if that's what they want representing them if it's intended for public view. The supreme irony of Republicans complaining for years about cancel culture and America becoming soft because of people crying about their feelings, only for them to become the biggest crybabies in the universe over other people's words, but only when it's directed at one of their own. I would never willingly hire someone who openly agreed with Kirk. If businesses feel they need to support the dislikeful views of him, by all means, only hire people who align with you. Please make that public so people know who they're giving their business to. Not wanting to be associated with someone who celebrates a violent passing, I understand that too. But assuming anyone openly saying they aren't mourning him is instead a celebration is dumb. Calling his irritable behavior and views for what they are is not celebration. I have always believed that not speaking ill of ghosts is BS. Someone doesn't become a good person because they've passed, even if it was chaotic or tragic. If you liked his views before, I would have thought you were not a good person. That doesn't change my opinion of him or you now. The only difference is that he can't So a good person is mostly determined by your opinion of them, mate? Well guys, that was all I could take. But what do you think of this whole stuff? Should workers be socked because of their opinions online? Or is it a subtle hint of fascism in America? The comments are open. Tell us what you think.